morning, everyone. It's Kalini Kent here, and on our Time to Talk session on a Friday evening, 8 o'clock. And I'm so pleased if some of you can join us. In the studio tonight, I've actually got two guests with me, two young men called Sam Pearson and Kieran Odedra. And hi, guys. How are you both?
I'm good, thanks.
Yeah. I'm right. How are you?
So I'm going to introduce these guys because they're awesome. I've known them both for, I think, 10 years each. I've met Sam when he was 10, when he came and started doing my drama classes. And then I met Kieran when he was 11. And it's really interesting the way they both stayed with me doing drama. And then they've also moved on to do other things and been at school. They've been in productions I've directed. But why I thought it was a great opportunity for them to join us tonight was because it allows them to share some of the challenges that young people are facing. The idea of these Time to Talk sessions is just so that we can actually raise conversations about any things that are important to us. We can share our wins, also share our challenges. But I thought it was a great opportunity to give a platform for younger people as well. These guys are 18 and 19, so it's not. In fact, are you 20 yet, Kieran?
Not just yet.
Not just yet. So these guys are 18 and 19, but it's a great opportunity for them to be able to sort of share their stories and how they've got to where they are. And just a little plug that next Friday, in fact, I'm doing a live in conversation with these two guys. And it's going to be an opportunity for them to talk more in depth about their stories and what's happened. But I just want to mention that we really welcome any comments or any questions, please. We're going to be on for about 20 odd minutes, but we just want to welcome any questions. And if you want to leave any comments, you just need to leave them. But if you want your name to show, you need to give StreamYard permission. But I'm pleased to see that we've got some people listening. And so, guys, let's just talk first of all. So, Sam, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background, where you are at the moment, where you are educationally, and so on?
Okay, so I'm 18. And I've just finished my A-levels. Well, but actually finished in March, but I got my results in August, like everyone. So I passed those, which were some fine grades that were luckily aligned with my targets. And now I'm just looking for, was looking for experience in the media and media production and things like that.
Yeah, and I think what's we're going to be sharing more of this next week. But I think what's sad about this is the fact that actually you were pursuing an apprenticeship with the BBC, weren't you?
Yes.
And so your experience has been very, very different to Kieran's, hasn't it? Because I think Kieran, what's your situation? Do you want to describe yours, and then we could do a comparison? Because even what I want to call this is what a difference a year makes. Because really, you're both been following the similar path, but actually this difference between you both is just remarkable, isn't it? Go on.
Yeah, so I am an apprentice. I've taken a degree apprenticeship in London in economics. So I am the school year above Sam. Finished my A-levels in 2019 and then took a job in London as an economics degree apprenticeship. So I've managed to move here and take that and work sort of half of it whilst we were able to go into the office and half of it since lockdowns happened. So yeah.
So the interesting thing is that you've been able to pursue your apprenticeship, and obviously Sam wanted to, and then it's not. And so even though lockdown has happened, you've still been able to pursue and get, you're still earning, aren't you? Whereas Sam, you've obviously, I think you contacted me, didn't you? Because you sort of said, look, you're now at a loose end. So, it must have been really disappointing. So, obviously you were leaving school and hopefully going on to a further, your career. So how was that for you in March?
Well, I was still hopeful in March because the application process hadn't been cancelled at that point. So, and I think I still had to go through another stage during lockdown. So I was still quite hopeful. And I think it was around May when I had to do video recordings of me answering preset questions. So it wasn't. Nothing really changed, and I was okay. It was fine. But then obviously in June when it got cancelled, it was obviously it was disappointing, but it was sort of hard because it was kind of late notice or short notice. which meant I had to sort of desperately apply for things or like contact people in only like a couple of months. So that was quite stressful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you also said as well that you had also made a decision that you were going to defer your university place, or you were about to, and so you ended up with predicted grades, which must have been really stressful, and then also deferring your place at university because you'd applied for uni as well as a backup.
Yeah.
And then you ended up not having the apprenticeship. So actually, you were sort of almost losing out every which way, really, weren't you?
Yeah. And that's why trying to find experience was even more stressful, because if I didn't find anything, then for maybe a year, I'd just be doing nothing. And so, yeah, that's why it's quite important to me to try and find something. Yeah.
And yet for Kieran, so like for you, obviously you've had the benefit of being still in a job. But what was it like? Because I think, remember, because you described it to me as Macclesfield, sleepy Macclesfield,
yes.
and then you're down in London,
yes.
and you're in London, and you're in this really sort of like busy, thriving, active atmosphere, and then all of a sudden lockdown happens in March. And was that hard as well?
Well, yeah, I think Sam and I both had that kind of shock element. On his side, it was more to do with A-levels and education. With me, it was more the fact that I had that experience of moving to London from sleepy Macclesfield, as you say, where it's all busy, everything's going on, there's lots of social events. Going to the office is really, really good. And then March, I think it was 17th, just hit, and we were told to work from home, and then it was that shock really of it. And it's almost a bit weird because you kind of feel a bit trapped, because here I am in this big city in London, and I'm confined to my room where my bed's just behind me where I sit now, and I wake up and then I come and sit at this desk and do my normal work. So yeah, that was a bit of a shock for me as well, I'd say.
Yeah, and have a lot of your friends found it a challenge?
Yeah, I would say so. I think obviously I have friends at university as well, and they've all found it difficult, and they had to come home early from their campuses and things like that. But then obviously had to, because by that point they've already signed rent contracts for second year and things like that, and so they had to move back. A lot of teaching at the moment is online, which for me was the case anyway, being an apprentice. But for a lot of those guys, changing to online teaching and not having that experience of going in was difficult. So I think we've all struggled in our own way, and we've all had difficulties from it, for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, you are coming home. In fact, I think it's tomorrow, aren't you? Coming back.
I am. I'm coming home on Sunday. My mum will be delighted at that.
And what's ironic about this, a little known fact, is Kieran actually lives right opposite me.
I do. A few doors down.
So in fact, when Kieran used to work for me in my drama academy, it used to be really convenient because I would be able to drop him off and pick him up and things like that. So it was handy. But it's just such a shame, isn't it, what's happened? And I think you probably, it's just amazing, though, the difference, because at least you're still earning, aren't you, Kieran?
I'm very, very fortunate. There are plenty of people out there, and it's a whole other conversation to talk about the government support of the people out there working and losing their jobs. But I'm very, very fortunate. I have an income still. I'm still able to work from home in the job I do. So
yeah,
very fortunate there.
So I think your mum, I don't know if she's listening, but I think your mum would be really pleased to have you back home for a bit. And, hopefully you'll be there as well for Christmas, but you're going to be here for the foreseeable. But so I think what we want to do is try to make sure we can just provide a platform for any younger people. It doesn't have to be, it can be, 15, 20s, whatever, anybody to come on and share any challenges. It could be adults sharing their challenges about what employment problems they're having, because, one of the things I work on is my jigsaw program, and it's about how there is a high percentage of, they're called NEETs, not in education, employment or training, young people coming out of school who don't have the employment or the education. I mean, you have the education, Sam, but some people don't actually have the education or the qualifications to get on and get the jobs that they need. And it's a really big challenge at the moment. And I think it's just nice to be able to give the platform for your young people to be able to share things. So we are, just to let everybody know, we will be carrying on doing this on a regular Friday evening at 8 o'clock. So please, if anybody wants to come on and be a guest, Sam and Kieran's going to keep popping in and out. Sam's going to be with me every week, and we're just going to be, sharing some topics. But just to sort of like maybe cover, what do you think are the biggest challenges that young people are facing from both of your perspectives?
I think so. I mean, one of the biggest ones.
I think you might need to come nearer to your mic, Kieran.
Sorry. So yeah, is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the biggest ones I think is probably that change of routine at the moment for young people. I think for all of us, and Sam will know this as well as I do, is that you have this kind of, until you're 18, sort of 13, 14 years of that is spent in this continuous cycle of education, and then like, your school holidays and things like that. And you build up this, you get used to this routine. And I suppose, a current issue right now is the break of that routine. Year groups at schools are being sent home individually because somebody's tested positive for COVID, things like that, which completely breaks your routine and can really affect your motivation. So I think that's, even for me, I'm past school now, I'm still in education at university, but even with work, that's still an issue that I face. So I think, that kind of break of routine definitely is a big one.
I think that big routine is quite a common thread throughout, isn't it? Because let's face it, young people, I think the 6 months out of education has been really challenging, hasn't it? Because as you say, it's that routine and you know what happens. You don't have to think about it too much. And all of a sudden you're at home. And if you're not used to that, being spoon fed exactly what you have to do, it's been challenging for the parents too, isn't it? Juggling with working and then all of a sudden becoming educators, which they're not trained to be. And I think it's been really, really tough for everybody, hasn't it? So the breaking routine is definitely one. Anything you want to add as well, Sam?
I think I would say, and this definitely does apply to everyone because of the current situation, but I think and especially to me, but I think finding someone who will give you a job, but sort of essential experience that a young person needs, especially coming out of A levels as well, because that's the last stage of formal education. Well, not the last stage, but it's up to you from there.
Yeah.
And luckily I'm in a position where I don't have to get money in every week because of my parents, obviously. But there are people out there who don't have those privileges and have to provide for themselves, and especially as a young person, that's very, very hard. So I think definitely that.
And I think that's what's also then all of this is leading to the mental health crisis, really, isn't it? Because it actually is putting a lot of strain on young people, isn't it? I mean, you both know me as well from the drama side and from 6Ths and so on. And I do know even people in 6Ths are finding it a bit of a struggle because, they're used to having that camaraderie and social side, but also people's Saturday jobs have gone. And now that you're now competing as well, aren't you, Sam, with people who are coming out of furlough and maybe, their jobs have been axed. So there's so much more unemployment. So I think it is a really tough one, isn't it? I think I would also love to ask you a bit about the isolation, which I think is another big factor, isn't it? Because social isolation is a big one because, when you go to school or college or university or work, you're used to that social scene, aren't you? And you take it for granted almost, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know how that's impacted you, because I think people obviously have not had the social scene and of their mates every day.
Yeah, it's it's built into us as humans, really. We sort of just we need that in-person contact, and especially again with young people, they're in school and they're constantly around their friends and people that they know, and then to be stripped of that is just really sort of damaging, because there are people there who there might be someone who you can only the only person that you can confide in, and then you can't do that. Well, not in person anyway, but
and I think that things get distorted online as well. So then when you're left to the only form of communication being through the social media or through online chats or whatever, it's not the same thing. How have you found that at all, the isolation side of it, Kieran, or has it not hit you as much because you're working?
It's a difficult question because I think, like as I mentioned earlier, the shock from being at the workplace and then sort of just working from home is a big one, and the isolation is involved in that, because obviously in an office, particularly the team I was in, we were quite social. You'd go for work drinks and things like that fairly often. Just those kind of not like non-planned conversations you'd have in the office just by walking past somebody, things like that. You can't have that anymore. You'll be sat at your laptop, but the inclination to just kind of Skype message somebody is not there. If you're walking past somebody, you might start a conversation, but you can't do that anymore. So that's definitely been a big thing. And trying to keep contact with lots of people. There are people, work friends who I've speak to a lot less now than I did in the office, just because of that. And so it does impact you, because certainly it's a lot less social. And again, I go back to what I said earlier about feeling trapped in London, because it's such a big, busy city, and yet here we are all kind of sat at home, not able to go out, not able to socialise. So there is that element to it, for me personally.
Yeah, and I do think, actually, just going on about the university thing and missing out, Sam, we discussed about the fact that you've obviously gave up your university, or you deferred your university place. And I don't know if you've had regrets about that, but quite honestly, the experience that young people are having at the moment at university is horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to do it anyway, but I'm much more glad that I did, because it's not the best. And no. From comments from my friends who have gone, like, it's okay, but like, it's definitely not what they expected.
Yeah.
And especially during the day, because you might have, say, like one lecture in the morning, and then you do nothing until the evening when you're hanging out with your flatmates. So that time alone can be quite damaging.
Yeah. So, there are quite a lot of themes, aren't there? There's obviously the worries about education, worries about employment, worries about the future. And I'm sure that these worries will be concerning people lower down. But, it's not all doom and gloom. There's obviously benefits to it. Obviously, people have had a bit of time, together as families. And I think it's helped some family units, because they've been able to sort of like spend more time together. But definitely, I know that there will be concerns as well with people who are like years 10 and 12. Who've had their continuity of education disrupted, because they've then had to go into second, they've missed out on that crucial 6 months, and whether it's going to impact the GCSEs or their A levels. So I know that's quite a challenge, isn't it? I don't know if you've got mates who are experiencing that. Have you, Kieran?
Not at that level anymore, but I can definitely imagine that. I mean, when I went through it, obviously without any of this stuff going on, it's hard enough as is, going from particularly year 11 to year 12, that GCSE to A-level transition, or GCSE to college, whatever you're doing, that transition is like, it's a big step up. So, I can only imagine that it's further, made even more difficult during this, when there is that uncertainty of the year group being sent home and having to work from home and doing your lessons online and things like that. I mean, I can't. I have the utmost sympathy for those people who are going through that, because it must be really, really difficult.
Yeah. Well, look, so listen, guys, we're going to round it up in a bit, but what I wanted to say was that, shall we do a bit of a shout out to anybody who's listening, or anybody who we're going to share this this recording afterwards. But I think it'd be really good if we were to share this, and anybody who wants to come on and share their experience. It might be quite nice to have somebody who's in, say, year 10 or year 11 who wants to share how it's going for them with the break in their education. People who, I know that, for example, we all know, like there's a couple of people in 6th who've had sort of moved on from, say, Mac High to go into secondary school, into 6th Form college rather, and they've had that break, so they've not had the continuity with their mates. All of a sudden everything ended, no proms, no end of year celebrations in the normal way, and that must have been really tough. Like, you missed out on that, didn't you, Sam?
Yeah. It's supposed to be in September, but I mean, we all knew it wasn't going to happen, really.
Oh.
Yeah.
It must, because really that's always what you look forward to, isn't it? When you've your end of year hoodie and all the rest of it.
Yes.
Did you get your hoodie, Sam?
I don't get the hoodies. It's not really worth it, to be honest. I think they're a bit, I don't know. I just don't. I mean, I got a yearbook. It's on my desk here, but
there's no net loss of you not getting the hoodie.
No,
that's okay.
As we go. So listen, guys, what is there anything else you want to say? What we'd like, I think, will be some really good thing is that if we were to maybe come up with some ideas of things we'll talk about, but it's not all going to be all the negative stuff, because we want to talk about music. What were some ideas we had? We did a brainstorming session, didn't we? We thought we'd talk about sports, hobbies, music.
Yeah, there'll be many other things that we can chat to next Friday, particularly. So
yeah, perfect.
So other things, not just doom and gloom.
So thank you very much. It's been so good having you on as guest. Have you enjoyed that?
Yes. Yeah, it's been fun.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So would you like to help me choose my coaching card? Because every evening I choose a coaching question. So if you want to just say to me, stop, and I will pull the one that you see. So you just need to say stop, one of you.
Okay. Wait, now. I thought you were gonna say you.
You're gonna say stop.
Right. Okay. I'll
say stop. You do it.
Okay. Stop.
Right. Okay. What 5 words would your best friend use to describe you?
Oh.
What 5 words? And this is what I've been showing every day. What 5 words would your best friend use to describe you? And that's quite an interesting, wasn't it? Because it makes you think about not how you are, but how you think you're perceived by other people, which is quite an interesting one, isn't it? Because especially if you're going into career or even, it's a good interview question, isn't it?
Also, how you want to be as well. How you want to be perceived.
How you want to be perceived.
Yeah.
You don't have to answer now, but you can.
Okay.
You can think of a couple if you want.
I think one that I definitely like to. I definitely say that I'm trustworthy. I definitely like to say that.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
Uh,
And go on, you give me one, Kieran. You don't have to give me all the 5, but I think it'd be really good if you could actually come up with 5 eventually.
I'll give you one. I'll say determined. I'll say, I mean, you know, I made the move to London. I guess that's determined enough, isn't it? I guess I'll stick that's a safe one. I don't. Maybe I wouldn't trust that all 5 would be complimentary, but I'll go with that as being one of them.
Well, I could give you both something. You're both incredibly good actors. Because just a little snippet here that Sam and Kieran were both in a production. #Taylor, which we took to the Lowry. In Manchester, so they were, and Sam was the lead, and Kieran was also one of the leads. So yes,
it was that clean. That was 3 years ago now, wasn't it?
It was years ago.
Yeah,
jeez. I know, and it was such an amazing experience. So yes, it was really good having you guys. Listen, I'm going to call it a quits there, and it's been absolutely fabulous having you on. Thank you so much, and we'll share this far and wide, and we'll get some more people on next week who can ask questions and interact with us. So thank you very much, everybody, and it's been lovely speaking to you, and thank you very much, lads. It's been really fantastic having you on. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.